"You took everything from me, Isabella," Croft snarled, his voice hoarse, a glint of madness in his eyes. "Now you know what it feels like." This chilling declaration hung in the air of the dilapidated seaside cottage, the waves crashing against the shore, a mournful backdrop to the twisted confrontation. Isabella Albright, a self-made tech billionaire, stood face to face with the ghost of her past, the man who had stolen her daughter Serafina 20 years ago. The gilded cage of her penthouse empire felt 1,000,000 miles away. She was about to discover that some truths, like some lives, are hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone with the courage to truly see. Isabella Albright lived in a gilded cage of her own making, the penthouse of Albright Tower, a monument to her ruthless efficiency. She'd cultivated an image of unshakable control, a woman impervious to sentimentality. Her life was a meticulously curated tapestry of high-stakes deals, exclusive events, and the crisp silence of absolute power. But within that silence, a jagged tear persisted. The phantom limb of a daughter, Serafina, vanished 20 years ago. 5 years old, swallowed by a rain-swept afternoon at a seemingly impenetrable estate. The official story was a tragic drowning, but a cold ember of disbelief had long smoldered in Isabella's heart. At the base of her gleaming spire, like a persistent rumor she couldn't silence, was Caleb. He was young, perhaps 13, with eyes that saw too much and a relentless, almost irritating optimism. He spent his days sketching caricatures, his worn baseball cap pulled low, his dark skin a stark contrast to the pale marble facade. Isabella encountered him most mornings, a fleeting detail in her precisely scheduled life. He'd offer a polite, "Good morning, Miss Albright," but she'd nod, a curt acknowledgement, her gaze sweeping over him without truly seeing. He was simply part of the urban landscape. One unusually warm autumn morning, as Isabella hurried towards her waiting chauffeured car, Caleb called out, "Miss Albright, wait, I have something for you." She paused, irritation flickering. "I'm in a hurry, child." "It's important," he insisted, holding up a crumpled sketch. It was surprisingly detailed, a woman with long dark hair and striking blue eyes. "I saw her last night near the old abandoned pier. She looked familiar." Isabella's brow furrowed. The woman did look unsettlingly familiar. "Who is this?" she snapped. Caleb shrugged. "I don't know, but she had this locket like yours." He gestured vaguely at the antique sapphire locket Isabella always wore, a family heirloom that had been Serafina's godmother's. Isabella dismissed it with a wave. "Nonsense. Many lockets. You're imagining things." She slipped into her car, leaving Caleb with slumped shoulders, the sketch still clutched in his hand. The incident was instantly filed under minor annoyances. Over the next few weeks, Caleb's sightings continued. He'd approach her with hushed tales of a woman who resembled her, haunting the forgotten corners of the city, a disused warehouse, a dilapidated bookstore, a park bench beneath a gnarled oak. Each time Isabella brushed him off, her patience wearing thinner. "Children have vivid imaginations, Caleb," she'd say, her voice devoid of warmth. "Stick to your drawings." She saw him as a dreamer, a distraction, certainly not someone who could offer anything of value. His appearance, his humble circumstances, all contributed to her subconscious dismissal. But a subtle disquiet began to gnaw at Isabella. Caleb's descriptions, though fragmented, were eerily specific. A distinctive limp, a faint scar above her left eyebrow, details too precise for childish fantasy. He even mentioned her unusual collection of antique bird cages, a peculiar hobby Serafina had developed. Isabella kept a single photograph of Serafina tucked away in her desk, bright blue eyes, a mischievous smile. One evening, staring at it, then at Caleb's sketch, the uncanny resemblance gnawed at her. Just a child's imagination, she chided herself, fueled by an innocent desire for attention. The turning point came subtly, almost imperceptibly. Isabella was reviewing security footage from a recently acquired property, a crumbling industrial complex on the city's outskirts. Her eyes, trained to spot anomalies, flickered over a fleeting image, a figure, partially obscured by shadow, moving through the periphery. Her heart gave a sudden painful lurch. The way the figure walked, that subtle, almost imperceptible hitch in her gait, it was uncannily familiar. She paused the footage, zooming in, her breath catching. The resolution was poor, but she could just make out a faint line above the figure's left eyebrow, and then a glint of metal around her neck, a locket strikingly similar to her own. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through Isabella's carefully constructed composure. It couldn't be. It was impossible. Yet the image resonated deeply, stirring a dormant hope she had long suppressed. And then, like a lightning bolt, Caleb's words echoed in her mind. She had this locket, like yours. Isabella found herself driving, not to a board meeting, but to the old abandoned pier, the disused warehouse, the dilapidated bookstore, all the places Caleb had mentioned. Each location was a dead end, a testament to her previous disbelief. The frustration was immense, but so was a burgeoning sense of regret. She had let her prejudice, her ingrained belief that a young boy from the streets had nothing of value to offer, blind her. When she finally found Caleb, he was hunched over his sketchbook, oblivious. "Caleb," she said, her voice surprisingly soft. He looked up, his eyes widening. "Miss Albright." "The woman you saw," she began, a little shaky. "The one with the locket. Where exactly did you see her last?" Caleb's face lit up with a mixture of surprise and triumph. "You believe me?" he asked, a flicker of disbelief. Isabella swallowed hard. I want to. Tell me everything." He described a pattern, a series of safe houses and clandestine meetings, always near places with a hidden history. He spoke of hushed conversations, of a man in a dark coat, of the woman's fearful glances over her shoulder. Caleb had not just seen her. He had observed her, piecing together a narrative Isabella had been too blind to acknowledge. He led her to a forgotten library, its shelves laden with dust. "She always leaves a book behind," Caleb whispered, pointing to a single volume on a worn table, The Secret Garden. Inside, on a dog-eared page, was a crude drawing, a 5-year-old's rendition of a flower, with a small familiar signature, Serafina. Isabella felt the world tilt on its axis. Tears, hot and unfamiliar, pricked at her eyes. With Caleb's help, Isabella started following the breadcrumbs. It became horrifyingly clear. Serafina had not drowned, she had been taken, and the details Caleb provided, details Isabella had scorned, were the key. He'd mentioned a distinct scar on the mysterious man's hand, a star-shaped birthmark. He'd described the man's penchant for wearing a particular silver ring, etched with a serpent. Isabella activated her vast network, her corporate intelligence systems humming. But this time, she didn't just use them. She listened to Caleb. His intuitive insights, his observations of subtle cues, proved invaluable, guiding her team through dead ends that her own cold logic would have missed. It turned out the man in the dark coat was Victor Croft, her former head of security, a man she had implicitly trusted. Croft had abruptly resigned a few months after Serafina's disappearance, citing personal reasons. The official report had marked it as a tragic accident, a child slipping and falling into the lake during a storm. Her body never recovered. But Croft, it emerged, had fabricated the entire story. The motive, Isabella learned through her forensic accountants, was revenge. Croft had been quietly embezzling funds for years, and Isabella, with her sharp mind, had been closing in. He had taken Serafina, not for ransom, but to inflict the ultimate lasting pain, to shatter the one thing Isabella held dear, believing it would be more devastating than any financial loss. He had raised Serafina as his own, a twisted act of vengeance, moving her from place to place, keeping her hidden in plain sight. The final confrontation occurred in a dilapidated seaside cottage, a place Caleb had described as having a funny smell, like old salt and fear. The air was thick with tension, the waves crashing against the shore a mournful backdrop. Croft, gaunt and wild-eyed, held Serafina, now a young woman, close. "You took everything from me, Isabella," Croft snarled, his voice hoarse, a glint of madness in his eyes. "Now you know what it feels like." Serafina, her eyes wide with fear, looked at Isabella, then at Caleb, who had accompanied them, hiding behind Isabella, his small figure trembling. She recognized Caleb. He had seen her on her covert trips for food and supplies, and she had always felt a strange, protective presence from him. "Serafina," Isabella whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "It's me, your mother." A flicker of recognition, a spark of an ancient memory, crossed Serafina's face. Croft, seeing his control slipping, lunged. The ensuing struggle was brief and brutal. Isabella, fueled by 2 decades of suppressed grief and fierce maternal instinct, fought with a ferocity she didn't know she possessed. Caleb, with surprising agility, created a diversion, throwing a handful of sand into Croft's eyes, giving Isabella the critical opening. In the chaos, security forces, alerted by Isabella's team, swarmed the cottage, apprehending Croft. And then silence. Just the sound of the waves and Isabella's ragged breathing. She turned to Serafina, her daughter, now a stranger and yet so achingly familiar. Serafina was thin, her clothes worn, her eyes haunted. But they were her eyes, the same piercing blue as her own. "Serafina," Isabella said again, reaching out a trembling hand. Serafina hesitated, then took a tentative step forward. The embrace was hesitant at first, then fiercely urgent. 2 souls finally reunited after a lifetime of separation. The silence in the cottage was filled with unspoken apologies, years of missed birthdays and unshared joys. Later, as they sat on the beach, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Isabella looked at Caleb. He was sketching in the sand, lost in his own world. "Caleb," she said, her voice soft, full of a humility she never knew she possessed. "I owe you everything." He looked up, a small, knowing smile on his face. "I just saw what was there, Miss Albright." "No," Isabella corrected, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. "You saw what I refused to see. You heard what I refused to hear." She didn't offer a direct apology in words, not in that moment. Instead, her apology was in the way she looked at him, in the gratitude that radiated from her, in the implicit admission of her past folly. She saw him now, not as a street kid, but as a brilliant, perceptive individual, a vital part of her world. Serafina's reintegration into Isabella's world was a delicate dance. There was therapy, slow, painstaking conversations, and the gradual rebuilding of a fractured bond. Isabella had to learn to be a mother again, not just a CEO, and Caleb became an unexpected yet integral part of their lives. Isabella funded his education, but more importantly, she listened to him. She sought his counsel on matters both small and significant, not because she needed his advice, but because she valued his perspective. She learned about his dreams, his aspirations, his unique way of seeing the world, and in doing so she shed the layers of her own prejudice. She saw beyond skin color, beyond social standing, to the individual within. The story became a legend in the city, the cold billionaire who found her lost child through the eyes of a street artist. Isabella Albright, once known for her ruthless business acumen, was now also known for her quiet acts of philanthropy, her fervent support for art programs in underprivileged communities, and her unexpected profound friendship with a young man who had once been invisible to her. One day, years later, Isabella, now a slightly softer, more empathetic version of her former self, watched as Caleb, a successful artist with his own gallery, spoke at a charity event. He talked about the power of observation, the importance of looking beyond appearances. He smiled at her across the crowded room, a shared understanding passing between them. Isabella thought of that first crumpled sketch, the dismissed words, the countless times she had judged a book by its cover. A profound shift had occurred within her. She had gained a daughter, yes, but she had also gained a deeper understanding of humanity. The world, she realized, was full of untold stories, profound truths hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by those who were willing to truly see, truly listen, and never, ever judge. The greatest twist of all wasn't just finding her daughter, but finding herself in the process, a woman forever changed by the wisdom of a young boy she had once so carelessly overlooked.